Yeah, hello everyone. Nice to be here talking to you, and thanks Wilfred Regina for providing me this opportunity to talk in this Tech Talk series. Today in this talk, I will cover, though this forum is mobile devices group. I'll give the context of Android in a vehicle, okay, where Android is used in a vehicle, then how vehicle platforms are evolving uh, past few years, and also how it will evolve in next few years. Then what is the vehicle hardware architecture or hardware platforms and software platforms? Then what is SOA? Uh, then SOA in Android, how Android probably could evolve adopting SOA, and how it is useful, and how vehicle OEMs and vehicle software architectures are adopting SOA. SOA is service-oriented architecture. So this is the agenda. I'll start with the context of Android in vehicle. So if you see a vehicle, there is a car cockpit, cockpit, and which will have the uh, instrument cluster. Instrument cluster will show the gauges. Gauges are showing the speedometer, then fuel gauge. So these are the gauges, and it will show. There'll be a lot of indicators like that you are aware of the instrument cluster. Uh, then this is in-vehicle infotainment system. This is where the applications like audio players. Then of course you cannot use YouTube and all while driving, but during parking you can use video applications. There could be settings application, navigation applications. So this is in-vehicle entertainment system. uh, on instrument cluster, typically it will be lightweight. There should not be too heavy operating system. So typically RTOS is used. Of course, Linux also is used. Some proprietary operating systems are also used. On in-vehicle infotainment system, Android. This is the context of this talk. So this is where Android is used in a vehicle. Just to complete this whole cockpit, I will tell about three more displays that are used in a vehicle. Okay, one display is passenger display. This is where passenger can view, say, video. Okay, passenger can have this display exclusively for him or her. Okay, the other display is heads-up display. Heads-up display uses windshield as the display. This is where, let's say, navigation application is running on in-vehicle infotainment system. Driver has to look away from the road and has to look at the screen. Okay, that is dangerous for the driver. So how about getting the navigation map on windshield? Okay, this windshield will display the navigation. Let's say when vehicle is approaching, let's say some shop or restaurant. So instead of driver looking at the restaurant, looking at the details and all that, it can display on the windshield. So it will be for the safety of the driver. This heads-up display is coming up. Of course, there are currently, I don't think of anything that has come up in the market. It may be there in the demo vehicle, but retrofit heads-up display products have come up. Okay, then other display that is there in a vehicle is the rear seat entertainment system. So passengers sitting behind can watch video, play games, and listen to music. Very independent display. Okay, these are about displays. uh, how the vehicle, of course I am not showing the other ECUs that are there, which will be all our ECUs. Say window is a ECU. There's a processor running there. Then tire pressure, there is microcontroller running there. Then seat adjustment, there are microcontrollers. So there are lot of microcontrollers are used, and typically all these are running have been using different SOCs. Let's say for infotainment system, there is one SOC used. For passenger display, one SOC. For instrument cluster, there is one SOC. For rear seat entertainment system, there could be some 2 or 3 SOCs. The cost for OEM is increasing. So there is a trend of reducing the cost of making the car, okay, and also reduce the hardware part and weight of the vehicle. So this is how vehicle platform is evolving. Say more and more software is coming into the vehicle. So vehicle is becoming like a smartphone. Say last 10 to 12 years, how smartphone has evolved. Say from monolithic and not extendable software to say downloadable, installable applications on smartphone. Say how smartphone has evolved. The trend is that vehicle will take the trend of how smartphone has evolved. Next 10 to 12 years, vehicle will evolve to similar to how smartphone has evolved past 10 to 12 years. Okay, what is driving? Say more software. More software is, say, if vehicle has more software, there is a possibility of installing, say, new services, new applications on vehicle, so that user can get more and more features. Autonomous driving is getting enabled. Say, since hardware is many things are driven by software, hardware. Say, as I told, number of SOCs are reducing. So supply chain issues that are currently there can be avoided. So since it is driven by software, OEMs can develop it once and use it in multiple products. Cost reduces. So this is the motivation factor. Then the computing resources, since software portion is increasing and it has to be future proof. Say computing resources has to be made sure that it is sufficient for current use cases as well as future needs. And there is evolution of the connectivity also, since 5G coming in, how vehicles can use 5G and in future 6G to use software running elsewhere also. Okay, then as I told, there is instead of using multiple SOCs in vehicle, there is consolidation. Then plug and play. If some new device or new part has to be introduced, if it is connected over Ethernet, since plug and play is possible with Ethernet, that architecture is also coming up. And by doing all this, what consumer is getting? Let's say I want to buy a car, but my budget is, let's say, some $5,000, let us say. Okay, I can buy a car with restricted features, so which is proportional to $5,000. Okay, later after 1 year or so, I can afford $3,000 more, let us say. Okay, instead of buying a new car, I can upgrade my car with new features. Since it is driven by software, okay, I can get more features and upgrade my car. So with this, the lifespan of a vehicle is increasing. So consumer is expecting that. So considering all this, how hardware platform will be for in a vehicle. Okay, there'll be multi-core CPUs. There'll be peripherals connected to peripherals on SOC. And considering the future needs, so let's say one SOC is not sufficient to run the use case, through PCI Express, there could be more SOCs, other SOCs getting connected, more accelerators can be connected. Okay, this is how hardware is kind of evolving. And on this, the software platform, how it is, since, as I told, instead of using multiple SOCs, there'll be one SOC running. Okay, so assume this SOC is coming from Qualcomm or Renesas or TI. Okay, MediaTek in automotive, we need to see how it shapes up. Okay, assume Qualcomm or Renesas chipset. On this, instrument cluster software should run. It will have kernel and drivers. it will have middleware and applications running. Okay, and Android also has to run on the same SOC. Okay, then there could be other systems also running. Okay, how multiple operating systems, multiple subsystems can run on one SOC? What enables it? Hypervisor is a virtualization concept. So hypervisor enables multiple operating systems, multiple subsystems run on same SOC. So hypervisors provide a way to schedule between, there'll be scheduler within each operating systems, but operating hypervisor will have its own scheduler to schedule these are called say this is called host OS, these are called guest OSs, and these are called VMs. So hypervisor will take care of scheduling the software in the virtual machines, and hypervisor provides mechanism for memory sharing, then inter VM, inter guest OS to host OS to guest OS, and guest OS to guest OS memory sharing. The communication mechanism also hypervisor enables. Okay, this is about software and how it runs on SOC. How about peripherals? So there will be a lot of peripherals connected. As I told, there will be multiple displays, passenger display, in vehicle infotainment display, heads up display, RSC1, RSC2, instrument cluster. There are multiple displays connected. Okay, these displays also have to be driven by the SOC. They'll be connected to this SOC, and these displays, let's say one instrument cluster is connected to the instrument cluster VM. So those have to be scheduled, right? And cameras, there will be multiple cameras in vehicle. So one is rear view camera to see what is happening behind, and gesture recognition, the parking assistant cameras. There could be multiple cameras. So these are peripherals. Hypervisor will take care of providing access to these peripherals to VMs, to these guest OSs and host OSs. We will not get into that hypervisor too much today. So in summary, hypervisor provides a way for these VMs to access the peripherals. Okay, and in vehicle, though I talked about instrument cluster, Android, and Rare City Entertainment, in a vehicle there are other things also. There will be subsystem to take care of autonomous driving, that is driverless car. Body is access to the windows, doors, then seat. Okay, access to that is body subsystem. Then safety, airbag, and powertrain, battery charging in electric vehicles, battery charging. These subsystems also will be there. Just to complete this subsystems, I mentioned this, and there'll be need for, as I told, since 5G and 6G will come in, and since latency is very important in a vehicle, so since 5G coming in, it will be faster. So vehicle may need to access the components running on edge and cloud as well. Okay, so this is software platform. Now that you understand what is the vehicle software platform at high level and where Android is used in a vehicle, we will get into the topic of this today's talk on SOA. Okay, what is service-oriented architecture? Okay, say till now traditionally we have been developing functionality as components, and those components get integrated. Okay, applications. In a way, there are some services within Android. So services are kind of applications are kind of monolithic, and they cannot talk with outside world. So service-oriented architecture will enable say two services talking to each other. Let's say service provider, whichever service comes in, that can register itself with the service infrastructure. It could have the service registry, could have the capabilities supported by that service. Okay, then service requester, whoever wants a service, will discover. So it will ask the service registry, I want vehicle service. Is there a service that is supporting that? Okay, then they can, the service provider and service connector, service requester can talk to each other through a pub sub mechanism. Say service requester will subscribe for a service. Service provider will provide, say, whatever data that it has, it will publish. And whoever has subscribed will get that data. So that's how this service-oriented architecture works. What are the principles? What, in a way, these principles will talk about the benefits also. So what service-oriented architecture will enable? What are the principles of it? The service that is implemented should have a standard contract is the interface. Let's say a service should expose the functionality in a standard way. Okay. Then each service should be independent of other services. There should not be dependency between more than one service. Okay. Service abstraction. All the functionality is hidden within the service. Only the interfaces are exposed. Okay. Service reusability. Once a service is developed and productized, that service should be reusable in future in the same product, in the same product portfolio, or other products. It is just a from service repository, just pick up and use it. So it should be easy to reuse. Service autonomy, it is similar to that loose coupling. It has to be independent. And statelessness, a service should not depend on, say, previous event that has happened within that service. So it should be stateless. Then discoverability, a service that is supported should be registered with service registry and should be discoverable. Service composability, probably in future, if current view of services could be may not be at grander level, maybe at grander level in future, since when services increase, there may be need for integrating, say, more services can be supported by one service. Okay, that is service composability. Okay, this is about generally about service oriented architecture and how this can be used in Android, and what are the challenges to be addressed. Say if Android has to move to service oriented architecture, these challenges have to be addressed. Though, as all of you know, that services are there in Android, say system server, media server, there are a lot of services, but are they, is it possible for outside entity access this service? It is not. It is within the within Android system interacting through AADL. It cannot be exposed to outside systems outside Android. Then a service, as much as possible, it has to provide self-contained functionality. So there could be need, say, current services are like service system server, media server. Those are not something that are independent. So system server is used to start other services. Media server is specific to Android. So if we have to literally or really in that sense move SOC in Android, so multiple layers have to be redesigned to make the subsystems compatible with SOA. Okay, that is a major redesign in Android. And migration to SOA has to be ensured without impacting Google Android compliance, the CTS verifier, VTS, then CTS on GSI. All these compliance tests should have to pass. So to address how these are addressed, probably my thought is there'll be need for taking this approach. The immediate approach is keeping the Android stack, intact. No changes in the Android SDK without changing anything, and this will ensure that the compliance is taken care of. It won't disturb the compliance. Using this standard Android SDKs, have services in the application layer. I will not call it application layer. Say application is slightly moving up. Say applications running, say current applications will use the SDK APIs directly. Okay, In SOA based architecture, applications will use the interfaces exposed by SOA based infrastructure. Let us assume vehicle data. You may be aware that some customizations that are done for Android to take care of vehicle is car APIs. So vehicle service can use car APIs to get the vehicle data, and it will use standard Android SDK APIs and expose it as a service. Okay, and this service can be accessed by application, say HMI, and other logic is written here, say getting the vehicle data, sending it to cloud. Okay, that is implemented here. It can use the service implemented here, and this service can internally use standard Android SDKs. Of course, applications can use the SDK APIs also. Okay, so how a service can become a service-oriented architecture? So there will be SOA-based logic, and there are some SOA middleware components. One of the examples I mentioned here is SumIP. There are Android bindings also. SumIP is one such component which will provide SOA functionality. So it will publish, it will provide interfaces for publish, subscribe. Then there should be some registry for the services. Okay, this is the vehicle service. Other example you can take is currently Maps. Google Maps is there, right? Google Maps, if it is exposed as a service, application still can use it within Android, and also it can expose interfaces to other systems. I will get to that in the next slide. So this is how a service-oriented architecture at application level can be implemented, not just within Android. So there could be some services running on the cloud also. Where if there are SOA-based services, applications can use SOA services running on the cloud through these same interfaces. So it can even subscribe for the data from the services running on the cloud. So with using same interfaces, applications can use. What is the advantage of this? As I mentioned, these services can be in a repository. They can be pulled anytime and without impacting the application logic. Okay, without disturbing applications, the new service can always be used. Okay, that's the advantage of service-oriented architecture. What is enabling that? Since the interfaces are standard and they can be developed independently, productized independently, so it is directly reusable. Okay, that's the benefit of SOA. Though I'm showing here as layers, this is how it will actually look. Say there are three services I'm showing here. These interact. Say service 1 can talk to service 2. It can, for example, service 2 is providing vehicle data. Service 1 wants to use vehicle data. It can subscribe for vehicle data. For that, SOA infrastructure is used. Then the service 2, whenever it gets the vehicle data, can publish, and this can get the data. And this can be heavy application also. It can have any kind of logic. So after receiving that vehicle data, it can send to some cloud component for further analytics. And assume there is a camera service which will get the camera data, and camera data may have to be streamed. There, RTSP streaming can be used. Say WebRTC can be used. Okay, so that these applications can be very heavy. It can have connectivity, telephony applications, media applications. Okay, it can use the services to provide the HMI to users. Okay, this is the infrastructure. Yeah. So in future, probably. This I'll not say this is I'm calling it long-term possibility, because a lot of rework need to be done to modify Android stack. So here it is going one level down. It is at application level. There could be services running on the SDK. SDK could be redesigned in such a way that media services can be one SOA service, Wi-Fi service. There could be vehicle service, camera service. So advantage of this is, in earlier architecture, earlier approach that I mentioned, everything is from application side. So there is little latency using the standard Android API. So there are multiple levels, right? With this, probably the outside, if this is exposed as a SOA service, say outside entity can use the service. So that is the advantage of this. But moving to this architecture will involve a lot of changes in Android stack. It will disturb the compliance, and probably the vehicle OEMs may not want to invest in modifying this architecture and maintain. Let's say a new version of Android comes, they need to take care of all these changes in the new version of Android also. So maintenance will become difficult. Probably this has to start by Google itself. And for Google also there is challenge, because they have to do it by while migrating. They need to ensure that the already stabilized in mobile stack, okay, and automotive also Android is used. So without taking care of already stabilized Android stack has to be taken care of. So this is that's why I'm calling it long-term possibility. Okay, yeah, but probably things will move in this direction. Okay, yeah. This is my thoughts on how SOA will evolve over time.